Hello everyone, this is the first lecture of Module 5 on the Information Technology Act 2000. Coming to the outline of this video, first we'll go through what is an IT Act, its aims and objectives. Next, the scope of the Act, where this Act can be applied to what kind of documents. Next, major concepts, that some of the definitions we'll study which will be used throughout this unit. Next is important provisions that is provided by IT Act. Next is attributations, acknowledgement and dispatch of electronic records. Next, secure electronic records and secure digital signature. So how the security is provided for electronic records and signatures. Finally, the regulations of certifying authority. What are the rules and regulations that a certifying authority need to perform? So the Information Technology Act, that is IT Act 2000, is an important legislation that was designed to provide legal recognition for transactions carried out by means of electronic data interchange and other means of electronic communication, commonly referred to as electronic commerce or e-commerce. Now the Act strives to achieve the following objectives. The first one is to give legal recognition to transactions done by electronic way or by use of internet. So any transaction that is done through internet, the legal recognition is provided through this Act. Second one is to grant legal recognition to digital signature for accepting any agreement via the computer. That is, any document that is signed using digital signature, the legal recognition is granted by this Act. To provide facility of filling documents online. So previously we used to fill documents using pen and paper. Now the facility is provided through filling online, and it is being legally recognized as well through this Act. So to authorize any undertaking to store their data in electronic storage, that is, once the document is filled, now the data is being stored in electronic form. And for these data that is being stored, an authorization is given. Only the respective person can be given to basically to access the data. So this authorization need to be followed as well. Next one is to prevent cyber crime by imposing high penalty for such crimes and protect privacy of internet users. That is, once the authorization is given to the data, only the authorized user can access the data. If the unauthorized user basically accesses the data, then we say that it is a cyber crime, or they misuse the data, then we say it is a cyber crime. In such case, some high penalty will be given according to this Act. Next is to keep legal recognition for keeping books of accounts for bankers and undertaking in electronic form. That is, these transaction that is being done by the users, a book of account will be kept by the bankers in an electronic form. So these are some of the objectives of this IT Act. Next, coming to the scope of the Act. So here we basically will see which are the documents or which are the area basically this Act is imposed and what are the areas it doesn't hold. So first one, the Act attempts to address the following issue. First one is legal recognition of electronic documents. Next is legal recognition of digital signature. Third one is offences and contraventions. Last one is justice distribution for cyber crime. So these are the scope of this Act, that is legally recognizing an electronic document, legally recognizing a digital signature. Finally, the offences and contraventions that happen based on which the penalty will be given. Last one is justice dissipation for cyber crimes. Now, this Act shall not apply to the following documents. The first one is a negotiable instrument other than checks. So if there is any negotiable documents such that is generated electronically, so such documents won't be considered as a legal document under this Act. Second is power of attorney. So those documents, power of attorney, if it is generated electronically, that won't be considered as a legal document. Third one is a trust document. Fourth one is a will that is being designed electronically, won't be considered as a legal document. any contract for the sale or convenience of immovable property or any interest in such property, those documents won't be considered. Last one is any such class of documents or transaction as may be notified by the central government in the official gazette won't be considered as a legal document. So these type of 6 documents, that is negotiable document, the power of attorney, the trust, the will, the contract or any other document that is specified by the central government, which is not considered as a legal document if it is electronically generated. Next we'll go through some major concepts. So some of the important terms used in the Information Technology Act are briefly introduced below. So first one is access. It is a means gaining entry into or instructing or communicating with the logical, arithmetical or memory functions resources of a computer or computer system or computer network. So a means by which a person basically accesses the computer or a computer system or a computer of network is said to be an access. Next is addressee, means a person who is intended by the originator to receive the electronic record but does not include an intermediary. The person who is the receiver, basically called as an addressee, but he receives an electronic record or a document without an intermediary, then we say that he is an addressee. Next is adjudicating officer, means an adjudicating officer appointed. So the main job of an adjudicating officer is to give a formal judgment on a disputed matter. So that is basically appointed either by the central government or the state government. Next is affixing digital signature, adoption of any methodology or procedure by a person for the purpose of authenticating an electronic record by the means of digital signature. See, any document is given and signature need to be provided by the person. So it should be provided using a digital signature. So what methodology he has used in order to sign a document, so that is called as affixing digital signature, the method which we use to sign a document. Appropriate government means any matter relating to any state law enacted under list 3 of the 7th schedule to the constitution, the state government, in any other case the central government. So an appropriate government can be a state government or it can be a central government. Next, asymmetric crypto system means a system of secure key pair consisting of private key for creating a digital signature and a public key to verify the digital signature. We know that the documents are signed using digital signature. So digital signatures are signed using the private key and it is being verified using the public key. And crypto system we use for that purpose is asymmetric crypto system, where we have the private and the public key pair. Next is certifying authority, means a person who has been granted a license to issue a digital certificate under section 24. Certifying authority is the agency basically who is granted to issue the digital certificates. Next is certification practice statements. So it's a means a statement issued by a certifying authority to specify the practices that a certifying authority employs in issuing the digital signature certificate. So one is for every person a digital signature certificate will be issued. So there is a way in which these certificates will be issued by the certifying authority. So these are called as practices. So certification practice statements means the way in which the certificate need to be issued by the certifying authority. Next, computer. Computer means an electronic, magnetic or optical or other high-speed data processing devices or system which performs logical, arithmetic and memory functions by manipulation of electronic, magnetic and optical impulses and includes all input-output processing, storage, computer software or communication facilities which are connected or related to the computer in a computer system or a computer network. Next is computer network. Means the interconnection of one or more computers through the use of satellite or microwave signals or terrestrial lines or other communicating media, and host can be terminals or complex consisting of 2 or more interconnected computers, whether or not the interconnection is continuously maintained. So the computer network can be framed using the communication media like satellite or microwave signals, terrestrial lines or other media, and the host present in the network can be a simple terminal or a complex system consisting of two or more interconnected computers, whether they are not connected in the continuous form or they might be connected in the continuous form. Next is computer system, means a device or a collection of devices including input and output support devices and excluding calculators, which are not programmable and capable of being used in conjunction with external files which contain computer programs, electronic instructions, input data, output data that performs logic, arithmetic, data storage and retrieval, communication controls and other functions. Next, coming to data. So data can be in any representation forms like it can be an information, it can be a knowledge, fact, concept or instructions which are being prepared or have been prepared in a formalized manner and is intended to process. So once the data is ready, we are going to process the data, or it might be already processed or it might be being processed. In that case, once that is done, then it might be stored in some of the form. So the format it can be stored is either in the form of printouts, that is a hard copy, or magnetic form or optical storage media or punch cards, or it might be stored in punch tapes or stored internally in the memory of the computer. So this is called as a data. Next is digital signature. Digital signature means authentication of any electronic record by a subscriber by the means of electronic method. So any document is given, the way we can authenticate an electronic record is using a digital signature. Next is electronic form. With reference to information means any information generated, sent, received or stored in media, magnetic, optical, computer memory, microfilm or computer generated microfilms or similar devices. These are called as electronic forms. Electronic gazette means the official gazette published in the electronic form. Now official gazette is nothing but it is a document basically which publishes some information electronically. Next is electronic record, means data record or data generated or image or sound stored or received or sent in the electronic form or microfilm or computer generated microfilm. Any of these is considered to be an electronic record. Information includes data, text, images, sound, voice, codes, computer programs, software or databases or microfilm or computer generated microfilm, any of these. Intermediary with respect to any particular electronic message means any person who on behalf of another person receives, stores or transmits that message or provides any services with respect to that message is said to be an intermediary. A person who is in between two persons communication is said to be an intermediary. He might be providing services or he might be transmitting the data. Any such thing is said to be an intermediary. Next is key pair. Key pair is an asymmetric crypto system, means a private and a public key, which are which are so related to that the public key is used for the verification of the document that is digitally signed using the private key. So we know that any document, electronically generated document, is being authenticated using a digital signature. Digital signature makes use of private key for signature and it uses public key for verification, and this private and public key together it is called as a key pair. So these are some of the terminologies we need to know throughout this module, which will be used in many of the concepts. So next we'll go through important provisions. So under this we'll be studying, first is digital signature, how authentication of electronic records is provided through digital signature. Next is electronic governance, where legal recognition of electronic records and legal recognition of digital signatures will be studied. Next is use of electronic records and digital signature in government and its agency. So how digital records and signatures are used in government agencies we will be studying. Next is retention of electronic records, publication of rules and regulation in electronic gazette. Finally, power to make rules by central government in respect of digital signature, we will be going through all these topics. So the first one is digital signature, authentication of electronic records. So how authentication of an electronically generated document is provided through digital signature. So before that, we'll know what is a digital signature. A digital signature is basically a way to ensure that an electronic record or a document is authentic. So a document can be of the form either an email, spreadsheet, text file, or any of those. So how any document that is electronically generated, we can say it is authenticated by providing a digital signature. Next, the Act contains the following provisions in relation to digital signature. So what are they? First one is, any subscriber may authenticate an electronic record by affixing his digital signature. So a person might say this record is an authentic one by just affixing his digital signature, but he has to be a subscriber. So what do you mean by a subscriber? A person who has registered to a certifying authority and received an certificate, digital certificate, and he has a certificate, then he is said to be a subscriber. So any such subscriber can authenticate an electronic record by affixing his digital signature. Second one is, the authentication of the electronic record shall be effected by the use of asymmetric crypto system and a hash function which envelop and transform the initial electronic record into another electronic record form. So it means that when you provide or affix a digital signature, you don't directly provide it on a clear text document. Basically, you convert that document in one more form using a hash function. Now this hash function will lead to a hash result which usually will be of smaller size than the original document. But your hash function should be computationally infeasible such that to derive and reconstruct the original electronic record from the hash result produced by the algorithm shouldn't be able to do that. That is, it means that once you have got a hash result and anybody basically verifies the document, he shouldn't be able to reconstruct the original document that is produced. Your hash function should be a one-way function. Second one, the two electronic records can produce the same hash result using the algorithm. It means that your hash function should be such that it shouldn't be able to produce two records with the same hash result. So this should be the functionality of your hash function. So once hash function is applied on a document and a hash result is obtained, on that you will be affixing the digital signature. Next is, any person by the use of public key of the subscriber can verify the electronic record. So anybody can verify the electronic record, but he also need to be the subscriber of that certifying authority. Using the public key of the subscriber, he can basically verify the document. That is the public key that is present in a digital certificate. Using that, he can verify the document. Last one, the private key and the public key are unique to the subscriber and constitute a functioning key pair. It means that the public and the private key that is used in that should be of a subscriber, it should be a unique one. Nobody should have the public and private key pair. Obviously, the public key is open to all the person who is going to verify the document, but the private key is known only to the subscriber. So that public and private key pair should be a unique one. Nobody should know that public and private key pair. Next we will see electronic governance. That is legal recognition of electronic records, how it is provided by electronic governance. So first we will see what is e-governance. E-governance is the public sector's use of information and communication technologies with the aim of improving information and service delivery, encouraging citizen participation in decision-making process, and making government more accountable, transparent, and effective. So there are three main target groups that can be distinguished in governance concept, that is government, citizens, and business or interest groups. So generally four basic models of e-governance are present. First one is government to citizen, that is called as customer model, then government to employee, government to government, finally intergovernmental that is government to business. Now, where any law provides that information or any other matter shall be in writing or in the typewritten or printed form, then notwithstanding any contained in such law, such requirement shall be deemed to have been satisfied if such information or matter is rendered or made available in the electronic form and accessible so as to be usable for subsequent references. That is, an e-governance can say any electronic record is the legal one only if it is rendered in the electronic format. It might be previously a written, handwritten one, or a typewritten one, or a printed form. Anything we can say it is if it is in the electronic form and then it is accessible for the subsequent use, then we can say the records are legal one by the electronic governance, that is e-governance. Next, electronic governance, that is e-governance, legal recognition of digital signature. So, a digital signature is an electronic or digital equivalent of a physical signature. Just as a physical signature on a paper document establishes the origin of the document, a digital signature affixed to a digital document, that is soft copy, establishes the origin of the digital document. So, how the originality of the paper document is through the physical signature of the user, similarly, the originality of the digital document is established through the digital signature. So, digital signatures are considered much more secure and foolproof compared to the physical signature. While the physical signatures can be easily replicated or forked, the technology behind the digital signature makes it virtually impossible to fork them. So, we can fork a signature, physical signature, whereas it is very difficult to fork a digital signature. More specifically, in India, the IT Act provides the legal sanctity for using digital signature. It means that it actually provides us the way to use the digital signature more than using a physical signature. So, where any law provides that the information or any other matter shall be authenticated by affixing the digital signature, or any document shall be signed or bear the signature of any person, then notwithstanding anything contained in such law, such requirement shall be deemed to have been satisfied if such information or matter is authenticated by the means of digital signature affixed in such matter as may be prescribed by the central government. It means that now central government basically says some of the documents can be affixed with digital signature and some cannot be. Now only which is prescribed by the central government, in that if you find a digital signature, then I can say that it is a legal document. That is what is being said here. Next, use of electronic records and digital signature in government and its agencies. So next we'll see how digital signature is used, or the electronic records with digital signatures are used in any government agencies. So because of the higher security associated with digital signature, many of advantages associated with storing document electronically, governments in many countries including India of course has passed laws and regulations encouraging the use of digitally signed electronic documents rather than paper document. In India, for instance, income tax returns or corporate returns etc. are to be digitally signed and uploaded electronically. So, where any law provides for, first one is the filling of any form, application or any other document with any office, authority, body or agency owned or controlled by the appropriate government in particular manner. So, these days we have many of the government websites and there are some government agencies which helps in filling a form through online, which is controlled by any authority or body or agency. In a particular manner it will be done. Next is the issue or grant of any license, permit, sanction or approval by whatever name called in a particular manner. Third one is the receipt or payment of money in any particular manner, then notwithstanding anything contained in any other law for the time being in force, such requirement shall be deemed to have been satisfied if such filling, issuing, grant, receipt or payment as the case may be is effected by means of such electronic form as may be prescribed by the appropriate government. So nowadays we also do the online payment where it makes use of electronic records and digital signatures, like in banks. Also you can see some of the apps whatever we use, like e-payment apps, which basically go for electronic records which are digitally signed. Documents are being stored and it is approved by the government as well. And even in some government offices we makes use of this e-payment is used instead of giving cash or checks. Next, the appropriate government may, for the purpose of subsection 1 by rules prescribe, the manner and format in which such electronic records shall be filed, created or issued, the manner or method of payment of any fee or charges for filling the creation or issue any electronic records under clause A. So it means that any of these agencies basically accepts all the other conditions, that is issuing of license or doing a payment. All these things are basically the procedure and the format in which it should be filed, it should be created, the document should be created, and how the signature should be created for those document is completely prescribed by the government. Okay, so this is how the use of electronic records and digital signature in government and its agency happens. Next we'll go through retention of electronic records. So retention basically means the continued possession or use or control of electronic records. So once the electronic record is created and it is digitally signed and it is possessed by someone, how it is used and controlled later. That is what we study here. So where any law provides that documents, records or information shall be retained for any specific period, then that requirement shall be deemed to have been satisfied if such documents, records or information are retained in the electronic form. If the information contained therein remains accessible, so has to be able for a subsequent use. So your information that is being collected, it should be stored in such a form that it is accessible further for a subsequent uses. The electronic record is retained in the format in which it was originally generated, sent or received, or in a format which can be demonstrated to represent accurately the information originally generated, sent or received. So if at all we are going to store a document, it should be stored in the original format, that how it is generated, and it is sent and received also in the same format. Next is the details which will facilitate the identification of the origin, destination, date and time of dispatch or receipt of any such electronic record are available in the electronic record. That is, not only this, the electronic record should also be filled with some of the details like the where origin of the document has happened and for whom it was initially destined, and the date and time of the dispatch and the receipt of electronic record when it was received. All these details should be present in the electronic record once it is being possessed by some of the agency. Second, nothing in this section shall apply to any law that expressly provides for the retention of documents, records or information in the form of electronic records. Next, publication of rules and regulation in the electronic gazette. So where any law provides that any rules, regulations, order, bylaw, notification or any other matter shall be published in the official gazette, then such requirement shall be deemed to have been satisfied if such rule, regulation, order, bylaw or notification or any other matter is published in the official gazette or electronic gazette. So it means that if government has to publish some rules and regulations or any order that is given by the court or any notification they want to send, they usually send it in the form of official gazette. That is nothing but using a paper format. So such a rules, regulations or orders can also be published officially using an electronic gazette as well. So it can be in any form, but electronically also you can present those rules and regulations as well. So provided that where any rule, regulations, order, bylaw, notification or any other matter is published in the official gazette or electronic gazette, The date of publication shall be deemed to be the date of gazette which was first published in any form. So it means that either you publish the rules, regulations, order, anything in the either in the official form or in the electronic gazette form, but the date of publication will be same in either one, which one you publish first. Either you publish it electronically or you publish it officially using a paper format, in which you publish first, the date of publication will be taken of that date itself. So you present in other form, the original date should be taken as it is. Lastly, power to make rules by central government in respect of digital signature. So what all power the central government has with respect to digital signature? First one is the type of digital signature. So central government decides what kind of digital signature they want. There are many algorithms how we can provide digital signature, so they have to specify. Second, the manner and the format in which the digital signature can be, shall be affixed. That is, what is manner we can fix the digital signature and what format it should be, that need to be specified. Next, the third point is the manner or procedure which facilitates identification of the person affixing the digital signature. So a person is nothing but a subscriber. A person becomes a subscriber when he has registered to a certifying authority. So there is a procedure in which the certifying authority basically authenticates the user and then issues the digital certificate. So that procedure is basically specified by the central government. So once the digital certificate is being issued for that person, then there is a procedure in which he can affix his signature. So even that is specified by the government. Fourth point is control, process and procedure to ensure adequate integrity, security and confidentiality of electronic records and payments. That is, there is a controlled process how and procedures basically to ensure that there is integrity, security and confidentiality of the electronic records and payments are maintained, that is has specified by the central government. Lastly, any other matter which is necessary to give legal effect to digital signature will be mentioned by the central government. Next, we'll study attribution, acknowledgement and dispatch of electronic records. So under that we'll study first attribution of electronic records, next acknowledgement of the receipt, last one time and place of dispatch and receipt of electronic records. So first, attribution of electronic records. So the word attribution means the act of establishing a particular person as the creator of the work of act. So with respect to IT Act 2000, attribution of electronic records actually means that fixing the identity or the sender of the origin. So who shall do that? Who can do that? So if it is sent by the originator himself, he can basically attribute the record, that is the electronic record, or by a person who has had the authority to act on behalf of the originator in respect of that electronic record. So there is one more authority which can act on behalf of that person, that is on behalf of the originator, then he can place his identity with respect to that person. Next is by an information system programmed by or on behalf of the originator to operate automatically, or if there is some information system which works on behalf of the originator of the message, then he can place the identity of that person. So there are three ways in which an attribution of electronic records can be done. That is nothing but placing the identity of the sender and the receiver, either by the person who has is sent, a person who basically sends the message itself, the originator of the message himself, he can place his identity, or the other authority which works on behalf of the originator, he can place the identity. Last is the information system, which again works on behalf of the originator, he can also place the identity of the sender. Next is acknowledgement of receipt. So where the originator has not agreed with the addressee that the acknowledgement of the receipt of electronic record be given in a particular form or by particular method. An acknowledgement may be given by any communication by the addressee, automated or otherwise, or any conduct of addressee sufficient to indicate that the originator that the electronic record has been received. So here it means that the person who is going to send the electronic document is called as the originator, and the person who receives that document, electronic document, is called as the addressee. So once a message is sent by the originator to the addressee, there should be some acknowledgement that need to be given by the addressee to the originator. Then only the document becomes an authenticated document. So whenever an electronic record is sent by the originator to the addressee, an acknowledgement need to be given. So it can be any communication by the addressee, that any communication that is done by the addressee can be given as an acknowledgement, either it is in the automated form or otherwise any other form, or any conduct of the addressee sufficient to indicate the originator that the electronic record has been received. Even that is enough. That is, any conduct message that is being given by the addressee is very much sufficient enough to know for the originator that the electronic record has been received by the addressee. Second point says that where the originator has stipulated that the electronic record shall be binding only on receipt of the acknowledgement of such electronic record by him, then unless acknowledgement has been so received, the electronic record shall be deemed to have been never sent by the originator. It means that if the acknowledgement is not received by the originator, even though the document has received by the receiver, I mean the addressee, okay, addressee has received the electronic record, but they have not been acknowledged the originator. In that case, it is assumed that the electronic record is not a authenticated one. It never gets authenticated. So the last point says that where the originator has not stipulated that the electronic record shall be binding only on the receipt of such acknowledgement, and the acknowledgement has not been received by the originator within the time specified or agreed, or if no time has been specified or agreed to within a reasonable time, then the originator may give notice to the addressee stating that no acknowledgement has been received by him, and specifying the reasonable time by which the acknowledgement must be received by him. And if no acknowledgement is received within the foresaid time limit, he may, after giving notice to the addressee, treat the electronic record as though it has never been sent. So it means that the reception of the acknowledgement and its time is also very specific in nature. That is, usually when a message is sent by the originator to the addressee, the addressee need to send the acknowledgement back to the originator in a specified period of time. If it is not received, basically the originator will send again a message to the addressee telling that acknowledgement has not received, and he also specify the reasonable time within which he has to send the acknowledgement back. If again it is being seen that it is not sent, the acknowledgement is not sent within a specified period of time, then the originator treats the electronic record as it has never been sent, means it doesn't authenticate the record that it is have been sent to the addressee. So on the whole, if I have to say, the acknowledgement of the receipt, that is the electronic record, happens only when the acknowledgement is received from the addressee to the originator. Second thing is, it should be sent in a specific period of time. If it is not sent, then basically the originator treats that the electronic record has never been sent to the addressee. The time and place of dispatch and receipt of electronic records. That is, how to record the time and place when the dispatch and reception of the electronic record happens. So first point, unless as otherwise agreed to between the originator and the addressee, the dispatch of electronic record occurs when it enters a computer resource outside the control of the originator. So the dispatch of any electronic record happens whenever it enters a computer resource outside the control of the originator. That is nothing but, if a originator is working in an industry, the server, when it leaves the gateway or the server of that computer of that organization, then we say that the dispatch of electronic record has happened from the originator. Second point, unless or otherwise agreed between the originator and the addressee, the time of reception of an electronic record shall be determined as follows. That is, here in first point we studied when do we record the dispatch of an electronic record, whereas the reception of record shall be recorded in the following, or it can be determined in the following way. So the first one is if the addressee has designated a computer resource for the purpose of receiving an electronic record. So in some organization there is a dedicated system or the computer resources which will be receiving the electronic record. In that case, receipt occurs at the time when the electronic record enters the designated system. Then we say that the electronic record has been received whenever it enters into the designated computer resource. Or if the electronic record is sent to the computer resource of the addressee that is not the designated computer resource, receipt occurs at the time when the electronic record is retrieved by the addressee. So it means that in the addressee side, even though the designated computer resource is being mentioned, but the reception has not happened into that system, but it has already received to the addressee through some system, even though then we say that the time of reception will be taken when it has received to the addressee, even though it has not come to the designated computer resource. Now the second option is if the addressee has not designated a computer resource along with the specified timing, if any, receipt occurs when the electronic record enters the computer resource of the addressee. So it means that in first case the addressee has specified the designated computer resource. In that case, whenever the record, that is whenever the electronic record enters into that designated system, that is the time and place when it has received. In second case, the addressee has not mentioned the designated computer resource. In that case, whenever that electronic record enters into the computer resource of the addressee, then we say that then we record the time and place of reception of electronic record. Third option is unless as otherwise agreed to between the originator and the addressee, an electronic record is deemed to be dispatched at the place where the originator has his place of business and is deemed to be received at the place where the addressee has his place of business. So the other cases, if it is agreed between both the originator and the addressee, such that in case of dispatch, it is originated from the place where the originator is doing his business and it is received at the place where the receiver is address of the place where addressee is doing his business. So this is the third possibility, that is originator has his business place and addressee also has a business place. So the dispatch of the record and the reception of the record is being maintained whenever it is dispatched from the business address of the originator and the business address of the addressee. Fourth option is the provision of subsection shall apply notwithstanding that the place where the computer resource is located may be different from the place where the electronic record is deemed to have been received under subsection 3. Lastly, for the purpose of this section, if the originator and the addressee has more than one place of business, the principal place of business shall be the place of business. So sometimes what happens, it is not only one place where the originator or the addressee might be working. It might not be only one place of business, he might do business at many places. In that case, if the originator or the addressee has more than one place of business, the principal place of business shall be the place of business. That is, he has to mention which is the most important principal place of his business. So that will be the place of business that will be considered. So if the originator or the addressee does not have a place of business, his usual place of residence shall be deemed to be the place of business. So if some addressee or the original doesn't have a place of business, then their residence address will be considered to be the place of business. Now, usual place of residence in relation to the body corporate means that the place where he is being registered. That is nothing but the corporate address where it is being registered, that itself will be considered as the place of business. Next we'll go through secure electronic records and secure digital signature. So under this we'll be studying like when we can say that an electronic record is secure and when we can say that a digital signature is secure. Similarly, we'll go through some of the security procedure as well. So first one, secure electronic records. So where any security procedure has been applied to an electronic record at a specific point of time, then such a record shall be deemed to be a secure electronic record from such point of time to the time of verification. That is nothing but we can say an electronic record is a secure one when we have applied the specific security algorithm and until it is being verified at the receiver end, until that point of time we can say that our electronic record is secure. Next is secure digital signature. So when can I say a digital signature is a secure one? So I can say a digital signature is secure one only at the time of verification of digital signature. That is, it should be unique to the subscriber affixing it. So whenever I get a digital signature, as a receiver I need to feel that the signature is unique. Second is capable of identifying such subscriber, that is as a receiver we should be able to identify who is the subscriber after verification. And finally we should be able to validate the digital signature. That is nothing but once the digital signature is being verified, the content in the record shouldn't be altered. So in that case I can say that a digital signature is a secured one. Finally, the security procedure. So the central government for the purpose of this act prescribed the security procedure having regard to commercial circumstances prevailing at the time when the procedure was used, including first one, the nature of the transaction, the level of sophistication of the parties with reference to their technological capacity, the volume of similar transaction engaged in by other parties, the availability of alternatives offered to but rejected by any party, the cost of alternative procedures, and the procedure in general used for similar types of transaction or communications. So these are the security procedures that are taken in with respect to secure transfer of digital certificates and as well as the electronic records. So next we'll go through regulations of certifying authority, that is CAs. Next, appointment of controller and other officers. So the central government may by notification in the official gazette appoint a controller of certifying authorities for the purpose of this act and may also by the same or subsequent notification appoint such number of deputy controllers and assistant controllers as it deems fit. So central government it will make an appointment of a controller of a certifying authority and they may also appoint few number of deputy controllers and assistant controllers also, and regarding the appointment the notification will be sent in the official gazette by the central government. Next, once the central certifying authority, the controller of the certifying authority has been appointed, then the controller shall discharge his function under this act subject to the general controller and directions of central government. So based on the central government's instructions, the controller will discharge his functions. Now based on the controller's instruction, the deputy controllers and assistant controllers shall perform their function. Now the qualification and experience and terms and conditions of service of controller, deputy controller, assistant controller shall be such as may be prescribed by the central government. It means that what qualification these controller, deputy controller, assistant controller or their experience or the terms and conditions of service, these are all mentioned by the central government. Next, fifth point, the head office and the branch office of the controller shall be at such places as the central government may specify, and these may be established at such places as the central government may think fit. That is, the head office and the branch office of the controller will be decided by the central government itself and it will be in such places that a central government may think it is fit to be. Last one, there shall be a seal of the office of the controller. So there is a seal of an office of controller. Next, functions of controller. The controller may perform all or any of the following functions. The first one is exercising supervision over the activities of certifying authorities. So controller will be controlling all the certifying authorities. So first job is the supervision of the activities of the certifying authorities. Second is certifying public keys of the certifying authorities. So certifying authorities or CAs will be generating the public keys, and someone has to need to certify it. That is done by the controller. Laying down the standards to be maintained by the certifying authorities. So the standards that every certifying authority need to be maintained, so that is laid down by the controller. Specifying the qualifications and experience which employees of the certifying authorities should possess. So the experience and the qualification in order to get appointed as an employee of the certifying authority is being specified by the controller. Specifying the conditions subject to which the certifying authority shall conduct their business. So there should be a procedure how a business should be conducted by the certifying authority, and that is mentioned by the controller. Specifying the contents of written, printed or visual materials and advertisement that may be distributed or used in respect of the digital signature certificate and the public key. So what content must be present in the digital certificate, that is written content, printed content, visual materials, any of this is specified by the controller. Next, specifying the form and the content of digital certificate and the key. Next, specifying the form and manner in which the account shall be maintained by the certifying authorities. There are many subscribers to a certifying authorities. Their account should be maintained, and how these accounts should be maintained, in which manner, that is specified by the controller. Next, specifying the terms and conditions subject to which the auditors may be appointed and the remuneration to be paid to them. So there should be someone mainly to audit the certifying authorities. So some subjects will be appointed for that. They are called as auditors, that is CA auditors, and based on their auditing, the remuneration will be paid to the certifying authorities. Now, facilitating the establishment of any electronic system by a certifying authority either solely or jointly with the other certifying authorities and regulations of such system. So if any extra electronic system is needed for a certifying authority, that facility, if it is requested with the controller, it will be done, and if there might be a need that it might be used by a single certifying authority or jointly it might be used with some other certifying authority. Next is specifying the manner in which the certifying authorities shall conduct their dealings with the subscriber. So how a certifying authority should deal with the subscriber, that the way in which it should be done also will be, the procedure will be mentioned by the controller. Resolving any conflict of interest between the certifying authority and the subscriber. If there is any problem with respect to the certifying authority and the subscriber, that handling of that conflict also is done by the controller. Next, laying down the duties of the certifying authorities. So what are the different duties and responsibilities of the certifying authorities is laid down by the controller. Maintaining a database containing the disclosure record of every certifying authority containing such particulars as may be specified by regulations which shall be accessible to public. So what all details of particulars of the certifying authorities which shall be accessible to the public, also the entire record of data of all the certifying authorities will be published by the controller. Next is recognition of foreign certifying authorities. So the controller may, with the previous approval of the central government and by notification in the official gazette, recognize if any foreign certifying authority as a certifying authority for the purpose of this act. It means that a controller can basically choose any foreign certifying authority as a certifying authority. Where any certifying authority is recognized under the first point, the digital certificate issued by such certifying authority shall be validated. It means that if controller has selected or appointed one of the foreign certifying authority, then any certificate issued by such foreign certifying authority is considered to be a valid certificate, digital certificate. Then the controller may, if he is satisfied that any certifying authority has contravened any of the conditions and restrictions subject to which it was granted recognition under the first point, then he may for reason be recorded in writing by notification in the official gazette and revoke such recognition. It means that if controller has observed that if a foreign certifying authority has been certified and is chosen, and if he found that some contraventions has happened with respect to the conditions and restrictions that is subjected by the controller, in that case the reason for such contravention will be asked from that specific foreign certifying authority, and it is taken in the written form, and thus it will be notified in the official gazette, and all the certificate that is issued by such foreign certifying authority will be revoked, and later it is recognized by the other certifying authority and other subscribers as well. Next is controller to act as a repository. So the controller shall be the repository of all digital signature certificates issued under this act. It means that we know that controller is the one who will be issuing license to all the certifying authorities under him. So he will be, the controller will be the repository of all the digital signature that is being issued by the different certifying authorities. So the controller shall make use of hardware, software and procedures that can secure intrusion and misuse, and observe such other standards as may be prescribed by the central government to ensure that the secrecy and security of digital signatures are assured. Since controller has a repository which maintains all the digital certificates that is issued by the different certifying authority, so it makes use of all the hardware, software and procedures in order to make these digital certificates secure and as prescribed by the central government. Next, the controller shall maintain a computerized database of all the public keys in such a manner that such database and the public keys are available to any member of the public. So it means that the controller will maintain all these public keys that is present in a digital certificate in a computerized database in such a way that any public can access any other member's public key. Next is license to issue digital signature certificates. So we know that digital signature certificate is necessary to digitally sign any document. Now DSC contains basically a key pair, which is the private key and the public key. The private key is to be maintained securely and confidentiality, whereas the public key is shared with the receiver of the document using digital certificate, with the digital certificate. Now in India, the government via the controller of the certifying authority has authorized a set of entities to issue digital certificate. That is, there are some entities who can basically issue the digital certificate to the subscribers, and these being authorized by the controller of the certifying authorities. Now, in order to become the issuer of digital certificate, you cannot directly become, you need to do some paperwork. So what are they? So first one is, any person may make an application to the controller for a license to issue a digital signature certificate. For example, if I want to become a issuer of a digital signature, to get that license I need to make generate an application to the controller. Second is, no license shall be issued under subsection 1 unless the applicant fulfills such requirement with respect to the qualification, expertise, manpower, financial resources and other infrastructure facilities which are necessary to issue digital signature certificates as may be prescribed by the central government. So it means that directly on just giving the application, you won't be granted in order to issue the digital certificate. So there are some of the measures that is being prescribed by the central government. So if those conditions are fulfilled, then basically a license can be issued. So what are the different conditions? First of all, the qualification of an issuer will be mentioned. He's expertise in that field, the manpower you have, the financial resources and other infrastructure facilities. If all these conditions are met, then probably a license can be issued by the controller of the certifying authority. So a license granted under this section shall be valid for such period as may be prescribed by the central government. So the validity of the license, again it will be mentioned, and it is valid only for that period of time. Second is not to be transferable or inheritable. You cannot transfer your license to some other organization, and it is not inheritable as well. Next is be subject to such terms and conditions as may be specified by the regulation. So there are some regulation that is specified by the central government or the controller of the certifying authorities, and those terms and conditions need to be followed by the digital certifying authorities. Next is application for license. So a certifying authority, how it can apply for the issue of license. First one is every application for issue of the license shall be in such a form as may be prescribed by the central government. So central government already has a form specified how we can apply to become a certifying authority. So an applicant should take that form, fill that form. Along with that form, he need to produce these four things. That is, first one is a certification practice statement. So what is the experience of that particular applicant in this field? Second is a statement including the procedures with respect to the identification of the applicant. That is nothing but identification details of the certifying authority, or you can say the applicant need to be given. Next is payment of such fees not exceeding 25,000 rupees may be prescribed by the central government. So a fees up to 25,000 need to be given. And finally, any other documents as prescribed by the central government need to be submitted along with the application form. Next is renewal of license. That is, whenever the validity period of a given license expire, you can renewal it. So how do we renewal a given license? So first one is in the required form. So there is a form given in order to renewal. We need to fill that form and submit. Along with that, accompanied by such fees not exceeding 25,000 rupees. So for every renewal, you need to pay up to 25,000 rupees as the fee. And this submission need to be done 45 days before the date of expiry that is mentioned in the license. So this is how a renewal of license can be done. Next, procedure for grant or rejection of license. So the controller may, on receipt of the application, after considering the documents accompanying the application and such other factors, he may deem fit grant the license or reject the license. That is, on receiving the application form with other documents, the controller might either he might grant the license or renewal the license, or he might reject the applications. However, if at all he rejects the application, then he should give an opportunity for the certifying authority to present his case. What is the first of all, the controller need to say what is the reason he basically is going he is about to reject the application, and based on that he need to give the reason for the controller. Suspension of license. So the controller may, if he is satisfied after making such enquiry as he might think fit that a certifying authority has, first point is, made a statement in or in relation to the application for the issue or renewal of the license which is incorrect and false in material particulars. That is, a certifying authority might suspend a license if at all with the application in order to issue a license or for the renewal of license the document submitted is not correct, it is a false material that is submitted. In that case, the controller might suspend the license. The second condition is that fail to comply with the terms and conditions subjected to which the license was granted. So if it is an application for renewal of license, so when the license was granted, if the certifying authority has not complied, means they have not followed the terms and conditions that is subjected by the central government or the controller, in that case also, when they have come for the renewal of license, he might suspend the license as well. Third condition is that fail to maintain standards specified by the central government or the controller. If at all the during the license granted period, if at all the certifying authority has failed to maintain the standards that is specified by the central government or the controller, in that case also they might suspend the license. The last is contravene any provision of this act, rules, regulation or order made thereunder may revoke the license. That is nothing but the provisions that is specified under this act or any rules, regulations or anything that is specified by the under this act is not followed by the certifying authority. In that case, the controller might revoke the license at any point of time. So, provided that no license shall be revoked unless the certifying authority has been given a reasonable opportunity of showing cause against the proposed revocation. That is nothing but if at all the controller feels that they are not following all the rules and regulations that is specified with respect to this act, in that case he might revoke the license, but he cannot directly revoke the license. He has to give the reason for the certifying authority, and certifying authority need to take that opportunity in order to showcase against that reason that is given by the controller. Based on that reason, if it is not a satisfying one, he can revoke the license. The second point is the controller may, if has a reasonable cause to believe that there is any ground for revoking a license under subsection 1, by order suspend such license pending the completion of any inquiry ordered by him. So this point holds basically for the first point that is mentioned in the previous slide, that is this one. If the certifying authority has failed to submit any material, or the material they have submitted, that is the document they have submitted, is incorrect, in that case the controller might suspend the license. That is nothing but based on the reason given by the certifying authority, he might give some other some period of time for them to correct their documents and resubmit the document. Now, however, no license can be suspended for a period exceeding 10 days. It means that only 10 days of duration of time will be given only to give a corrected documents back to the controller based on the reason they have given. So, the certifying authority has been given reasonable opportunity of showcasing against the proposed suspension. Next is, no certifying authority whose license has been suspended shall issue any digital certificate during such suspension. It means that if at all a suspension period is given for any of the certifying authority, then they are not supposed to issue any digital certificate to any of the subscriber during such suspension period. Next, notice of suspension and or revocation of license. So whenever a license has been suspended or it has been revoked, now it should be informed to the outside world, that is for the subscribers, for the existing subscribers, or and to the outside public world. So this is basically notified by the controller by publishing a notice of suspension and revocation, which is maintained in a single database by the controller, and this will be published through a website. Next is power to delegate. The controller may, in writing, authorize the deputy controller, assistant controller, or any officer to exercise any of the powers of the controller under this chapter. That is nothing but if any power of the controller need to be given to his subordinates, that is the deputy controllers or assistant controllers, he can issue those powers to them in writing. Next is power to investigate contraventions. So if there is any contraventions of the provisions of act or rules or regulations that is done by any personnel under this act, in that case an investigation need to be done by the controller. So the controller or any officer authorized by him can do this, can take up this investigation based on the contraventions. Next is access to computers and data. So if at all any contravention is suspected by the controller with respect to any organization who went against the act or rules and regulations, in that case, if any system is involved in that contravention, such as the computer system or any apparatus or data or any other materials connected with it, and there is a need to access such system, that might be a computer system, then the permission is to be given to the controller or any person authorized by him. In that case, if any assistance is required, that is, it might be a technical assistance or any other assistance that is required in order to acquire the computers and the data present in that system, that should be provided by that organization. Next is certifying authority to follow certain procedure, that is the CA need to follow certain procedures. What are they? First one is make use of hardware, software and procedures that are secure from intrusion and misuse. Next is provide a reasonable level of reliability in its service which are reasonably suited to the performance of intended functions. Next, adhere to the security procedures to ensure that the secrecy and the privacy of the digital signatures are assured. Finally, observe such other standards as may be specified by the regulations. Next is certifying authority to ensure compliance of the Act, that is, every certifying authority shall ensure that every person employed or otherwise engaged by it complies in the course of his employment or engagement with the provision of this Act, that is, he follows the Act, rules and regulation and order made thereunder. Next is display of license. So every certifying authority shall display its license at a conspicuous place of the premises in which it carries on its business. So it means that at least in their organization they need to display their license. Next is surrender of license. So every certifying authority whose license is either suspended or revoked shall immediately after that suspension or revocation need to surrender the license to the controller. So if at all a certifying authority feels that it fails to surrender the license, in that case the person in whose favor a license is issued shall be guilty of an offense and shall be punished with an imprisonment of up to 6 months, or a fine may be up to 10,000, or both may be issued by the certifying authority by the controller. Lastly, disclosure. So disclosure basically means that what are the different data or materials that can be disclosed to a public. So every certifying authority shall disclose in the manner specified by the regulations its digital signature certificate which contains the public key corresponding to the private key used by the certifying authority to digitally sign another digital signature certificate. So they can display their digital signature certificate. Secondly, any certification practice statement relevant to thereto, so they can publish that. Notice of the revocation or suspension of its certifying authority. So if there is a notice that has been issued with respect to the revocation or suspension of the certifying authority, that need to be published or disclosed to the public. Any other fact that materially and adversely affects either the reliability of the digital signature certificate which that authority has issued or the authority's ability to perform its services need to be disclosed. Secondly, wherein the opinion of the certifying authority any event has occurred or any situation has arisen which may materially or adversely affect the integrity of its computer system or the condition subject to which a digital signature certificate was granted, then the certifying authority shall use reasonable efforts to notify any person who is likely to be affected by that occurrences and act in accordance with the procedures specified in the certification practice statement to deal with such event or situation. So it means that especially if the integrity of a computer system is not preserved, wherein the most important secure data is kept in that, for example might be the private key of the digital certificate or anything such that, in that case if such situation occurs then it should be notified to each of the person who will be affected by such occurrences. Then also the procedure then with respect to that, the procedure specified in its certification practice statement to deal with such an event also need to be practiced.